I'm Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Injury Lawyers, and you know what makes me mad? When insurance companies deny your claim for no good reason. That's why people call me. I'm the lawyer insurance companies don't want to deal with. Visit goldfingerlaw.com and get us working for you.
Get Goldfinger today.
Hello and welcome to the Raptors Reaction Podcast. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm speaking to you after Toronto Raptors suffered their second loss of the season, losing to the shorthanded New Orleans Pelicans, who didn't even have Nikola Mirotic, who is an all-time Raptor killer, and Elfrid Payton, who, you know, is whatever, but, you know, he's actually starts for this team and stuff. So you would have figured that this would have been somewhat of an easy win, but no, the Pelicans came into Toronto and just flat out kicked the Raptors' ass from start to finish. I mean, the Pelicans won every single quarter, not by too much, but basically just held the Raptors at arm's length for the entire game, eventually winning by a score of 126 to 110. I think actually losses like this are way more productive than, when the Raptors just win every game, because, traditionally you're not going to learn too much about wins. It's just, okay, this guy's hot, this guy's playing well, whatever, right? Like, when losses, that's when you start to see where the cracks in this team are. And I think this was a night where the Raptors, I mean, you could say what you want about, the Pelicans being hot, and they were really hot. I mean, towards the end of the game, it was like Jrue Holiday pulling up for three, swishing everything. E'Twaun Moore pulling up for three, swishing everything. E'Twaun Moore spinning and going to the rim, scoring. I mean, E'Twaun Moore had 30 points, man. This is crazy. But he's just like a career 7 points per game kind of guy. I think it does reveal some weaknesses, so let's rattle them off. I think, for one, there is a downside to the way the Raptors play defense, which I have to say, the Raptors have been very effective defensively all year. They've had some weaknesses in terms of defensive rebounding, and in terms of, I would say giving up a little bit too many free throws, but honestly, like, that wasn't really even an issue tonight. But the thing is, the way the Raptors play defense is generally they want to hound the ball handler at the three-point line, and then they want to funnel guards to drive into their bigs and kind of rely on their bigs to defend a little bit 2-on-1. Although the Raptors have generally been really good at having the guards recover on the play and getting back into the sequence, and also B, positioning their bigs such that they're not giving up too much easy offense. But I think the Pelicans are sort of uniquely equipped to deal with a team like the Raptors. For one thing, they have Anthony Davis, who is just a nightmare to deal with offensively, defensively. He is, a top 3 player in the NBA. Like, this is a truly elite player, And yeah, I mean, he just basically the Pelicans could run pick and roll with him every single time down the floor and get a good shot, and that's what happened. The one thing that the Pelicans really succeeded in with regard to Holiday, who had 29 points and 14 assists and was just flat out the best player tonight, despite even Davis having a 25 and 20 game, was that, Holiday is so strong that he's able to keep the defender on his back off the pick and roll. And at that point, it really does become a 2-on-1 situation where the Raptors couldn't get back into the play, and Holiday basically had his way with the Raptors. He was great finishing around the basket, great in the mid-range, and also just did a good job of finding Davis as well. And of course, if you would understand the Raptors being hesitant to leave Davis. I mean, you don't want him to score too much on you, but, man, the Raptors just did not have it in terms of perimeter defense. And I also think the same principle applies when, the Pelicans run curl plays. I mean, like, that's basically where Moore got most of his points, was running off Julius Randle for curls and consistently being able to go downhill. The Raptors, I thought, did a really poor job of, pressuring up on Jrue Holiday to sort of make the pass tougher, when, Drew's at the top of the floor and you have Moore curling around the screen or whatever. If you know that play is coming, which generally speaking, the play is coming, the Pelicans only really ran like 4 plays tonight. You got to be up on Holiday, make that pass tougher. But seriously, Moore was able to catch the ball in the middle of the floor, just goes to the basket, 1-2 dribbles, and his finishing tonight was incredible. Like, the guy had 30 points on 13 of 18 shooting. Like, it was one of those nights. But still, I thought the Raptors basically just, they got bullied, and they really looked kind of small, like, up and down the roster. I mean, the Pelicans got 14 offensive rebounds. Davis by himself got 8. And in terms of points in the paint, the Raptors have been pretty solid in this regard. I think coming into this game, they were top 5, allowing about 42 points per game or sorry, 45 or 42, I can't remember, but top 5 in points in the paint. Tonight, the Raptors allowed 72 to the New Orleans Pelicans. And yeah, the Pelicans just kind of flat out dominated the Raptors. I mean, to be honest, the Raptors had no answer for any of this stuff. Like, they would, and you got to credit the Pelicans too for keeping their composure and always sort of coming back, and responding to every single run the Raptors would make with something of their own. But like the Pelicans just, I don't know. I mean, at some point you let a team get the rhythm and you really can't get going. And yeah, I mean, the Raptors defensively got a little bit desperate in the fourth quarter. Nick Nurse busted out a all small ball, switch everything lineup with Kyle Lowry, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. And I thought the results aren't great because, the Pelicans just ended up shooting a bunch of threes, and they actually hit a whole bunch of tough threes. But the defensive effort I thought was really solid. And I think it's something the Raptors should invest more in, just to have that look in their back pocket. They haven't had to go to it pretty much at all this season, but there are going to be teams and there are going to be matchups where you have to be versatile defensively, and I think that's where the Raptors maybe lacked a bit of experience in that regard, because they did have a couple possessions there where the Smalls were unable to communicate on a switch on a screen, and Davis was able to get free for a lob. But for the most part, I thought that defense was pretty solid. But again, the Pelicans just kept hitting shots and the Raptors couldn't get back into it. But so that's one concern. Defensively, that's a concern with the Raptors. I mean, no matter what defensive scheme you're going to play, you're always going to have some weakness, and that's basically the weakness of the Raptors right now. In terms of offensively, the other concern I have is really just Kyle Lowry, who is, I mean, it really became the case last season, and it hasn't really shown up to be the case this year, because Kyle has gotten some points for the mid-range, gotten some points driving, but when the defense collapses and they pressure up on Kyle, the 3-point line, such that he can't pull up unless it's from 40, he can't score. This is just an issue. This is an issue last year, is an issue this year. Kyle tonight had 4 points and 1 of 9 shooting, right? I mean, Drew Holiday basically turned into playoff Damian Lillard tonight. It was ugly. It really was ugly. And this kind of all or nothing, kind of feast or famine offense from Kyle is one of the biggest reasons why you got to be a little bit concerned about the Raptors' secondary scoring in a tough playoff series, because there are going to be ways where Kyle can be shut down. He is an opportunistic scorer more than anything else. He's not just a guy who can create out of nothing. And, the Raptors even got some secondary scoring today. You get 19 from Ibaka, you get 22 from Pascal. You're usually good on that. But, without Kyle scoring and without Kyle being able to hit outside shots, that's such a big factor for this team, because all of a sudden then the Raptors are really imbalanced. They have a lot of guys that want to play in the post, that want to play in the paint, but the Raptors just couldn't hit threes tonight. I mean, the Pelicans kind of realized that early on. They kept swarming the paint and kind of daring the Raptors to shoot. The Raptors couldn't hit threes. Got a lot of good looks early in the game, couldn't hit them. And the Pelicans basically decided, we're not going to guard the 3-point line outside of pressuring up on Kyle. And we're going to see if the Raptors can beat us that way. And the Raptors shot 13 of 45 from 3 tonight, which is only 29%. I mean, it wasn't good. And that's a concern. I mean, Kyle's all or nothing offense is a concern. And also because they packed the paint, I mean, they were able to really muzzle Kawhi Leonard, who shot 7 of 20 from the field for 20 points, which isn't that bad, but for a guy who's as efficient as Kawhi normally is, that's a really bad number. Kawhi, I thought, got a little bit of a tough whistle. I think the Raptors overall played in a game where the Pelicans were much more physical. The Pelicans were consistently able to get separation off screens, and they were able to, basically play a more physical game, and they're a stronger team than the Raptors. So I think that benefited them. But regardless, these are going to be situations the Raptors are going to, encounter in the future. So you have to learn from these experiences. And I thought Kawhi was just always seeing double teams. There's a screen cap I put out there where there's a possession where all 5 Pelicans were just completely focused on Kawhi. And it's just hard for him to get a shot off in those situations. I think Kawhi has done a good job of kicking it out. And, he only had 2 assists tonight, but he really did create a lot of open looks for people that, guys like Danny Green, Kyle Lowry, Ibaka really couldn't hit. But still, for a guy who is your number one option, you definitely want to make sure that there are different ways to get him looks. And I thought tonight the Raptors, were kind of not that creative. I mean, the Raptors haven't been that creative in getting Kawhi offense all season. It just hasn't been an issue because he's been in the post. But tonight, I mean, Kawhi was in the post and he was always seeing 2 defenders. And at that point, what do you want him to do? He either takes a Kobe shot, which is how you end up with 7 of 20 shooting, or you kick out to guys who are cold. And the guys, neither option was particularly ideal. So I think defensively, that's an issue for the Raptors. And also, I think the three-point shooting really just hasn't gotten going all year. But yeah, it wasn't great tonight. In terms of positives, I do want to focus on positives. I think there are a couple things to look at. I think one, Pascal, I mean, he gets the first start tonight. 22 points on 8 of 12 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3. Just named, Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Continued it today with another efficient outing, and hitting the threes is always nice. He's been pretty hot in the last 2 games, although I don't really expect that to sustain itself. But I mean, I just like the way he's playing with so much confidence offensively. He's always willing to attack, and he's not really turned the ball over very much at all. No turnovers tonight, despite shooting 12 times. And I like the confidence. He was taking it to Anthony Davis. He was taking it to Julius Randle. He was taking it to the switches. He was driving in transition. I mean, I love the way Pascal's playing. I thought even defensively, Pascal had some nice moments. He was probably the Raptors' best defender. Either him or OG Anunoby, who another bright spot for the Raptors. Probably gets the second start tonight. OG has now scored in double digits for 4 straight games. Tonight he has 17 points and 6 of 13 shooting. 2 of 8 from 3. You would like to see that be better, but he was taking a lot of good shots, and he just, missed a couple of them. That you can live with that kind of stuff. You want to see process over results, especially early in the season. And yeah, I thought OG was effective defensively. I mean, there's 3 steals tonight. Poked the ball away from Anthony Davis and took it in for a dunk. Just good defense all around from OG. The one thing I would say for OG and Siakam is I would like to see both of them way more on the defensive glass, especially against a team like the Pelicans, who, were very insistent on going inside. So you really, really have to make sure you box out. And I don't think OG and Siakam necessarily always prioritize rebounding, but on a night when everyone else is really struggling, I think OG and Siakam are the 2 stars. And then in terms of your third star, I mean, you can go a couple of ways. I think Fred VanVleet had some nice moments where he really pressured up on the ball, but I don't like the way Nick Nurse kept using Fred every time he basically looks at Fred as like a Patrick Beverley type, where like if a point guard's going off, you could put Fred on him. But that really doesn't really apply to some of the bigger guards in the league. Like Drew Holiday's biggest asset as a guard is that he's bigger than most point guards. So when he's dominating Lowry, I don't want to see Fred VanVleet on Drew Holiday. I want to see Delon Wright on Drew Holiday, or I want to see one of the Raptors' wings on Drew Holiday. I don't want to see Fred. That's not and credit Fred for picking off Drew on one of those possessions, and I think dumping it off to someone else, either OG or Siakam, for the finish. But Fred's going to have the same issues that Kyle has, right? The only thing is that Fred is going to be more dogged, in terms of pressuring, and he's better against smaller guards who are quicker. Like if it's like a Chris Paul type, if it's like an Ish Smith type, you know what I mean? Like that's when Fred should be used. I don't really like the way Fred was used, and I was really confused as to why Delon didn't play more minutes tonight. I thought this was a perfect matchup for him in terms of, the Pelicans have a big guard in Etuan Moore and a big guard in Drew Holiday. Like, you probably want to put your own big guard out there in Delon Wright, and Delon only played 16 minutes, and it wasn't because he wasn't hitting threes. He shot 2 of 3 from deep, and was pretty active defensively, and he got 10 points in 16 minutes. So I'm going to give it to Delon, but I'm a little bit concerned about, or I was not concerned, I'm just a little bit perplexed as to why Nick Nurse chose to play it the way he did. But honestly, I think it's a good learning lesson. I think the Raptors can really go into practice, look at some film, and see some of the weaknesses in their defense, and sort of proactively look to sort of address those and sort of learn to play different styles and have counters ready. Because, when you're winning all the time, you're just going to keep running the same thing you're running all the time, and you're not going to be very productive about improving. And I think, losses like this are really going to reveal what the Raptors have left to work on. I mean, obviously it's been a great start so far, and this doesn't really change that, but, the Pelicans are, I don't know. I mean, you would think the Raptors would have won this game based on the circumstances. Again, no Mirotic, no Peyton, but I mean, the Raptors, it's a learning lesson for sure. And then in terms of Gerald Henderson, and obviously it has to be Etuan Moore. I mean, just anytime the Raptors put Etuan Moore, just give it to Etuan Moore ahead of the game. I mean, 30 points on 13 of 18 shooting, 3 of 5 from deep, turned into some cross between prime Dwayne Wade and prime Rip Hamilton, so like a classic 2007 guard, and he was dominant tonight, man. No one can stop this man with the huge cheekbones. yeah. So anyway, that does it for the podcast. Again, you can read 10 things on Twitter. And I'll be back on Wednesday to recap Dwayne Casey's first homecoming as a member of the Pistons.